The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Hey, Kara Oosthuis here with RealAgriculture.com. We are back with another Canola School series here today, and I am here, social distancing with Tom Wolf of Sprayers 101 and AgriMetrix. How is it going today?
It's going great, warming up, so that's very good news for everyone.
Yeah, you're in Saskatoon, correct?
That's right.
Are farmers getting into the fields over there yet?
Not even close, but the snow has left the fields, but just recently.
There you go. We're still okay. The sun's shining. We'll get there.
Yeah, it's warmed up. That's good.
So we're here today talking about herbicide resistance. Now, not so much in the traditional, stop spraying things, but in the sense of you're going out to the field, you need to spray. What are some of the management techniques you can actually use when it comes to mitigating herbicide resistance? So how can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting development. As you know, there's some new weeds that are on their way to Western Canada. Water hemp is one of them. It's already in Manitoba. Palmer amaranth is possibly not far behind. Both of those weeds are what we call dioecious. In other words, they must cross-pollinate to reproduce. There's a male plant and a female plant. And what that means is they're susceptible to the development of a kind of resistance that we call polygenic resistance. In other words, some plants might just naturally be a little bit more tolerant of the herbicide. And if they also cross with other plants that are equally slightly more tolerant, their offspring are likely to be even more tolerant. And you move that forward a few generations, you end up with something that is pretty close to resistant. It might have a tolerance of threefold of the herbicide rate, for example. And the way to prevent this kind of resistance is by preventing any plants from surviving the herbicide application, right? Like the survivors are probably a little bit tolerant. Mm-hmm. And if they can set seed, then their offspring are going to be a bigger problem possibly. So the whole concept, and this comes really from the US, is to let no weed survive. Can't allow it. And that means we now have to look at, okay, where in our field and under what circumstances do we have these sublethal doses? That's what this is all about,
So what are some of the things producers can do? Using different modes of action, obviously, is probably a good one.
Yeah. So that's a really important starting point. The most powerful tool that we probably have is to make multiple effective modes of action tank mixes. So the classic example in Western Canada, where we still only have kochia that's resistant to glyphosate, but there's possibly other weeds following, is to spray modes of action, at least 2 additional modes of action that are known to kill kochia, so that we don't just rely on one. We don't just apply one point of pressure or selection pressure. And those multiple mode of action tank mixes can get expensive. You might have 2, 3 different modes of action in a tank, 4 possibly. And people are saying, well, do I want to spend $20 on a burn-off if I can do it for 3, right? And the answer is, well, there is a way, and that is to use an optical spot spray, such as a weeded system, which will save you a lot of money just by spraying only the weeds where they're present. You might save 65 to 75% of your total burn-off bill. And that makes the multiple effective mode of action affordable. And that in turn delays the onset of that kind of resistance. So I think that's a pretty important strategy.
Where do you see implements such as weeded in the future? Like, do you see them becoming more popular?
I think so. I mean, I see us ultimately by spraying herbicides, we are applying the selection pressure that leads to resistance. So that our days are numbered. Resistance will continue to increase in all likelihood. It certainly hasn't shown any signs of abating. So I think we need to prolong the tool that we currently rely on until we have a suitable alternative, whatever that alternative might be. And I think something like an optical spot spray that allows the multiple mode of action tank mix, that is a powerful tool there. So I do see it playing a role. Of course, it plays also, it has a strong environmental benefit. It's a good story for ag, less spraying. It has an economic benefit. Even if you don't take advantage of the additional modes of action, it saves you money.
Yep, absolutely. How do things like doses play into this as well? Can you tank mix with different levels?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to avoid a situation in the field where we underdose that will allow some weeds to survive just. So where does that happen? I mean, a lot of us know it happens possibly in the wheel tracks. We see that year after year, my wheels seem to be where the weeds are growing. And that has to do with travel speed. That has to do with maybe needing to put an additional larger nozzle behind the wheels to make sure that they do get the dose. They are, the wheels do pump air and they do displace the spray, and so less gets there. So we have to make that up. So additional nozzles, bigger nozzles in the back. Another way is with turn compensation. We notice, I think everyone knows that in the corners of the field and maybe other places where you make a turn, the outer wings of the seeder or the sprayer, particularly the sprayer though, underdoses. And so turn compensation can be had with a PWM system. So we're talking about capstan pinpoint, Aim Command Pro, Raven Hawkeye, John Deere ExactApply. And by the way, now the new weeded system, the weeded Quadro that just came out this year, also has a full-blown turn compensated PWM system. So it actually has that feature too. It's now a player in the PWM market.
And when it comes to looking at herbicide resistance, how is it important to keep in mind things like drift as well?
Yeah, so when we study the uniformity of the spray on this field, we are noticing that the higher the wind speed and the finer the spray, as you might imagine, there's obviously more drift, but there's also less uniformity. So we do measure uniformity. So there's more high spots and low spots, and those low spots are the problem. The real problem would be though if you had the same low spot in the same place year after year, and that's probably not likely to happen because it's fairly random. But the likelihood of year after year of there being a place where maybe there traditionally certain things happen to the boom height or something because you've got a topography issue, you might be more likely to underdose in that spot year after year, and that would be a place where I would be careful. So the best thing to do is just to invest in, low drift nozzles, minimize that problem, keep your boom low, maybe travel a little slower, all the things that we really don't want to do because we think they rob productivity, which then again leads to a whole other topic, which is how do we actually get more done? How does that actually happen? It's not about driving fast.
Absolutely. And is there anything else you would like to add when it comes to dealing with herbicide resistance within the sprayer?
I would like to just say one thing, and that is it's sort of an example of this whole creeping incrementalism. It's slow. We tend to dismiss it because it's a small change from year to year, but over the course of many years, it becomes a really big problem. Herbicide resistance came to Western Canada in the 80s, and it's been with us for 30 or 40 years even, 30. And we've gotten used to it being sort of a low level, but it is growing. And I think once we get certain weeds that we cannot control any other way, it will be a bit of a crisis for us. So we should do what we can while we can.
Absolutely. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kara.